Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so it's Tuesday, the 9th of March, and we're going to open up the Finance Committee meeting. First thing on the agenda is meeting minutes from December 3rd.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes of the December 3rd.
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. So Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Dave?
Lucy or I?
Tom?
Tom's eye.
Darren?
Aye.
And Pete?
O'Malley, aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's all unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the meeting minutes from March 4th.
I'll make a motion
Make
that
a
we
mo-
approve the minutes from the March 4th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Ted?
Purcell, aye.
Dave?
Lucy or I?
Darren?
Ross, aye.
Tom?
Tom's eye.
Pete?
O'Malley, aye.
And Narwhal, aye, so it's approved, unanimous. All right. So the first thing tonight is the fiscal year 2022 budget discussion. And Anita's joining us to go over the town clerk elections board of registrars.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yes,
can I make one broad statement just so that it's going to cross all budgets so everybody understands what we're doing here? Just one broad statement. The budget books that you guys have reflect the 2% increase across the board for all non-union employees. As you know, the unions are all going to get at least 2%, a couple of unions getting 3%, but this budget, including Anita, does reflect a 2% increase. Those employees who are brand new within 4 years are, there's steps included in their line items. And Anita is one of the people that there's a minor change because she just didn't fall on the classification schedule according to what the schedule is laid out. I just wanted you to all understand that that's in the budget. I know it's something we're gonna have a lot of discussion about, but I did want you to understand, as you look at all these different budgets, you're gonna see that in the budgets at 2%. I'll also want to be clear that I did not include steps for any employee who's been in the town longer than 4 years who did not get the steps in the past. A number of department heads made it clear to me that they're still on step 2 after 15 years. I did not include steps for any of those people. My logic being, if you didn't get that step in the first 4 years, you're not getting it moving forward. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that as you guys discuss the individual departments. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
all right, so Anita, please.
Go. Okay, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all, or not see you, but so I'm responsible, our office is responsible for 3 separate budgets. The first is the town clerks. And like Ron said, the 2 salary lines both have a 2% COLA for both the town clerk and assistant town clerk. There's also a step for the assistant town clerk. And in the town clerk, it's a matrix adjustment. For some reason, there was an error a year or so ago. And I wasn't on the matrix entirely. So there's a small adjustment for that. The other 3 or 4 items are all level funded, so they're pretty straightforward. Are there any questions?
So the additional salaries, what do those cover?
That's the $1,000.
Yep.
That is based on Mass General Law for town clerks who have received their town clerk certification. It's CMMC certification program. You have to be a town clerk for 3 years and attend a certain number of educational courses, and you get points also if you have a degree like that. So that's
So
town-
that's for your certification.
right, basically short and sweet. Yes.
So we needed, there's 2 people here.
Pardon?
There's 2 people.
No, on the certification, it's just mine.
Okay, but I mean, the department itself.
Yeah,
comprises of-
it's, yep. Damien is at 28 hours a week. And I would be requesting a lot more hours if you wanted to give it to me.
Mhm.
But we're open 34 hours a week right now, so but
Okay.
she's here. So she's here 4 days a week.
Thank you.
And you work 40 hours a week, right, Anita?
Correct.
Okay.
Not during election cycle, though.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So if you,
Anita, just a point of clarification. This is Darren. Good evening.
hi, Darren.
Are you compensated anywhere else for the election cycle?
No,
Okay, thank you.
it would be nice, but
I
no one,
understand.
I don't think town clerks expect it, you know, it's part of the job, you know, what you're getting into. So. And then the next one is the elections budget. That shows a decrease. It's basically because the upcoming fiscal year, we only have 1 election as opposed to 3 in the last fiscal year. And if you'll notice the reductions, I didn't reduce everything by a third, mostly because we don't know what's coming up with what the legislature is going to do for early voting, for mail-in voting. So I was afraid to cut it too much. And the other thing is on our purchase services, for local elections, it costs us more money to do things like print the ballots and things. The state picks up a lot of the costs for general elections, and we end up picking up the costs for municipal. So that's basically the election budget. And then the third one is Board of Registrars, and there aren't any changes in that. It's all level funded.
Does anyone have any questions for Anita?
I'm all set, I think.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward to me.
That's-
It is.
Well, thank you very much, Anita. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Hope they all go so nice and easy.
Have a
Take
great
care.
night.
Bye.
Thank you, Damien. Okay. so-
Sorry, I was on delay. You're welcome.
Okay, so now Ron,
Yep,
you're gonna do the select board and everything else like that, so.
you got it, you got it. So first, guys, just to understand that you're gonna find that a lot of these budgets have a lot of level funding in it. I've already worked with department heads to reduce these budgets as much as possible and eliminated a lot of things that are non-contractual. So mostly what you're gonna find are contractual obligations and expenditures that we just couldn't get away from. So anyway, the select board's budget, the first line item, and you'll see it's pretty much level funded is the salaries, the stipends given to the Board of Selectmen. The select board administrative assistant was eliminated, I guess, a year or so ago when they combined the spots. And my administrative assistant takes care of all the duties of the, for the selectmen as well. So that's been zeroed out. We added $50 to the select board temporary secretary position. That's Tamika. I gave, as I said, all non-union employees the 2% raise, very small amount, but I think Tamika does a great job and is more than entitled to it. I think we would all agree. Purchase services is level funded. Looking at the expense line, we're about where we should be in this portion of the year. It's pretty hard for me because I haven't had a full year under my own belt. But if you look back to 2019, you'll see it was up at 19,000. I have no idea what they did. If I had a year, this is an area where I thought, oh, maybe we can cut $1,000 on, but I'm not totally sure because, like I said, I don't have a year in this department to understand it. But so I've level funded it. Same is true of select board supplies. Charges, we reduced by $50. Selectmen's other charges, you're going to see that if you looked at your spreadsheet of the actual costs to date, you're going to see it's significantly lower this year. And the reason for that is the MMA meetings that we have, both the annual meeting where selectmen should attend to improve themselves as selectmen. Because of COVID, they couldn't have the meeting. So there's going to be money that's going to fall back into free cash from that line item simply because the MMA meetings did not occur. So that's why I kept it level funded, but this year is going to be less spent because of the nature of what's going on with COVID. Any questions on the selectmen's budget?
So you don't have a year under your belt, but you do understand what's being put through that purchase services line?
Yeah, you can see in the narratives, I've given you guys narratives of each of the departments. You'll see that this is all the legal notices. It's photocopier leases, all of those kind of things are in the budget. So some of these things are kind of fixed expenses. There's a little bit of variation there, but again, I'm not sure how much paper and different things that they use for the year yet. I think once we see this year's number, I'll have a better handle on it for next year. So maybe we can cut $1,000 out of it next year. I need a little bit more time, but most of it is fixed costs. You want to do town admin?
Everybody all set with town and with the Board of Selectmen?
I'm good.
Okay. Town administrator, the first increase is in the town administrator salary. As you know, they hired me as a contract, and the first year was what they frankly hired at, the 115. So that's the first year. The second year, it's gonna be based upon 122 a year. So you'll see 70. You'll see the amount if you look in the narrative of the different combined times at each salary, which comes to 120,142.96. That's a contractual item, so it is what it is. The next one is the administrative assistant. Truthfully, I went to the Board of Selectmen and asked for an increase in his line because I was having a difficult time finding a qualified candidate for this position. After discussing it with a couple of Board of Selectmen voted against it. It was a 3-2 vote. Talked to at least a member or two of the Finance Committee, and it seemed that this was going to be an issue. So I decided not to increase the salary. So this is essentially the same salary as last year. I never made that increase. This reflects a 2% increase, and it reflects a small part of the year, 17.2 weeks will be at a higher salary, which includes the step. So that's why that salary is based. So it's a recommended salary of $33,275. The rest of this budget is completely level funded, so there's no other changes. Any questions about the town administrator budget?
Do you not have an assistant at this point, or did you hire
I
someone?
do. She started Monday. So Erin has
Okay.
been, the current administrative assistant's been helping me out for a couple hours in the morning while I've been waiting to transition to the new person. I can be honest with you, and no offense to the person I hired, but I had probably 4 people that I wanted to hire that withdrew because the wages weren't high enough or, a variety of reasons. But I'm very happy with the person I got, but I have to admit it was like 7th or 8th down the line of trying to hire for this position. It was very difficult to find someone to do what effectively is a executive secretary job at the rate we're paying. But she has agreed to it. She's a local resident. I think she's going to do a good job. Any questions on town administrator?
Good.
All set.
The moderator is almost insignificant. It's a $125 budget. It's all level funded. It's just the salary for the moderator, a whole $75 and $50 for whatever fees he might need for something for the town meetings. But it's a whole $125. Any questions on that? It's level funded.
No.
Same is true of the finance committee. It's level funded. And you're gonna find that every board and commission is level funded. Nobody got an increase. Later on, we are gonna talk about the RDIC. That I did increase significantly because of the project that's going forward, the Harbor Homes, big 55 and older complex. We're gonna need Tamika to do minutes for that meeting, but we're gonna talk about maybe a potential other way to fund that later on. But the finance committee is a whole whopping $1,220. It's level funded, and it's basically Tamika's salary and $200 for whatever else if you needed a legal posting or something else.
Now, the $200 is for our Association of Town Finance Committees.
No, okay. So it's a very small budget. It's very, very tiny. And, not anything I don't think you can really cut here, so. Any questions on the finance budget?
No,
Well, that's the whole game tonight. Very, very quick.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, so, Madam Chair, I just have a question around process.
Yep.
Sure.
Going forward. I mean, we know, I saw your mail today and saw Ron's mail. And we realized that the school committee or the Wachusett district, while they're making some changes, they're not coming anywhere close to where we need to be. And so this is going to be hard. I mean, I understand Juan's comment about everything being level funded here, et cetera. But even if those things that were, if we level funded everything, we might have a real hard problem going into the town meeting. So not for tonight, but over time, we need to start thinking about a plan to communicate not only the difficulties, but what the options are for the town meeting.
Madam Chairman,
Hold on one second, Ron. So yes, Pete, what we're gonna do is we're gonna meet with all the departments so that we can hear what they're going to need and what their needs and wants are. And then at that point, we will sit down, and at that point, we'll start looking at cutting the budgets the way we're gonna have to get to a level that we can afford.
Okay, so when we say cutting the budget, is that the only option? Is there any opportunity? And I've only been through one, so I'm not really, I'm not really qualified to be able to say. But would there be other options to be able to increase revenue some way? Magic?
There'll be some discussions on that. I know that the town is more than willing to accept donations from, anyone that's willing to give some donations, Pete. So I can stop by and pick up a check if you want.
Okay, listen, I have change in my pocket. I'll just leave it on the step.
we only
we
need
can-
about 800 and something thousand dollars, so
Okay.
how
so-
many, Ron, how many cans is that?
that's a lot. Well, Madam Chair, can I kind of comment on this? I kind of want to make a broad kind of
Sure.
comment on this. Nothing that you haven't heard from me already. So in my opinion, there's three ways this can go. One, in my opinion, is damn near impossible. That's reducing, as you saw, I sent you guys out an email. The schools cut about 222 grand from the 960 they're asking. That would still, if you saw my presentation last night, leave a budget deficit of $800,000+, somewhere around 850 grand. That's a huge amount of cuts on the town side of government. So if we were to attempt that, and truthfully, at the end of the day, I think we're going to find $100,000 in reasonable cuts here. One, I think new growth will go up by 75, 85,000. We might be able to save a little bit on health insurance. So I think we can find 100 of that 850. So we're down to 750-ish is difficult. In my mind, I see no way to cut 750 from the town side of budget, the town budget. I just don't know how you can do it. No matter if we sliced and diced police and fire and everything else, it's going to be hard. But one option is to cut the budget on the town side by that much money. Okay, that's one option. Secondary option is to cut the town budget by some amount of money and ask and try to get the town to vote for an override for some. So let's throw numbers out, just guesstimates. Let's assume we cut the 800 or something or $700 something thousand budget by 300,000. we go to the town and ask for an override of 350 or 400,000 and divide those two issues up. The last option is just to straight go to the town and say, the schools are asking for this much money. We have to vote for, we can ask the townspeople to vote for an override for that whole amount of money. So those are the three real options. Now, the big problem with an override that bothers me is if we went down that road and asked for a whole, let's say we asked for the whole thing as an override, just for an example. What's to stop the school system next year to come in and ask for 900,000 next year? We'll be in the same damn boat we're in this year. So, you know, the override, if it was a permanent fix to this, I could at least say, okay, let's all bite the bullet and think about it. But I'm concerned that even if we did an override, that the school system would still ask for huge numbers and would be in the same boat next year looking for another override. So there's got to be some way that we've got to get the school numbers not to be at the level increases that they're at, because the town can't sustain those increases with Proposition 2.5. So that's our big dilemma that we're going to be talking about. And, you know, we're going to have to look at all those options and think about what this committee, because it's the finance committee that recommends to town meeting, what your recommendation is going to be.
There is one other option. We could always put, one of the other versions of the budget we can do is we could put forth a different number for the school that we could afford and see if we could get that passed on the floor. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good way to do it, but that is another option. Pete, we're gonna end up having to do a lot of different iterations of the budget like we've done in the past.
And my concern is that the school department last year sharpened their pencils or whatever they said that they were going to go ahead and do, and went back and looked at things, and they did reduce their budget, but not by anything of significance.
Right.
It ended up being like $700,000, feels like 700 million, but $700,000 of an increase. And this year, we're still now looking at another increase, not level funded. We're looking at another increase of 700. It's $1.5 million over 2 years. And to Ron's point, I don't know how we justify that. I don't know how we get away from that. It's going to be a problem, you know. And I'll be perfectly honest with everybody. My son is a police officer in Berlin. I am not, and I'm prejudicial towards it, but I am not at all inclined to think that I want to cut police, fire, emergency service. I just don't feel that this town should be looking at that as an option. That takes away a lot of stuff, a lot of opportunity, and I understand that. But there's got to be a way that we can do this kind of stuff. And I just don't know, you know, maybe we haven't gotten to the point where we've been as open with the town as to our budget and what it means to the budget. The school department comes in, I'm sorry I'm taking so much time, but the school department comes in and they have a raft of people that come into the town meeting. It's very good. I'm glad to see that we have that number of people at the town meeting. But when their particular interest is served by the article in that meeting, they then leave. And then that leaves it for the rest of the town to be able to make that decision. Now, the problem is that they're leaving, but they will still be affected by whatever the rest of the town meeting does. All of those people are still going to experience the same kind of difficulty that the town people who stayed for that meeting. So I just don't know, I'm not sure yet what we have to do to be able to get that interest in the town base, to be able to have them come in and say, wait a minute, we need to be able to do this. Okay, Karen, I'm done. Thank you.
No. Pete, I think you're definitely right. And this year, we will not do what we did last year. We will go to the town meeting when we decide what the final number is and whatnot. We will go with a list of exactly what cuts and what it means, and we'll have a page so that we can all answer every single question to everyone's answer as to what it's going to mean to the town, so that we will be able to speak intelligently about that at that meeting.
Karen,
Yep,
I seem to remember when I was on the library board and we had, the 08, 09 years of some big cuts, that we asked the department heads to, or at that point, I was on a board, the department head was asked, I believe by finance, to give some numbers fairly well in advance, like maybe now or the next few weeks, as to, all right, let's say the school doesn't change at all. What does that impact a particular department? So maybe Ron could say to the department heads, give me a number that is 10% cut for this year. And is there any wisdom in doing something along those lines?
So if I could through you, Madam Chairwoman?
well, hold on one second, Ron. So
Yep.
yes, Ted, in those years, we, as a finance committee, decided to recommend that the town administrator go back to the departments and said with a 10% or a 3% or whatever cut, and then the department heads make the decision as to where exactly they make those cuts. That's typically what we've done in the past. We can give some recommendations, but it's really their department. So they're the ones that are going to be best to make those decisions.
Right, but what I was thinking was, is there a reason to have that worst case scenario, well in advance of town meeting, so that a presentation could be made to the townspeople and say, this is the situation we're in, and if we go in these different directions.
Yes. Those years we had information sessions.
Right,
And we'll have to do stuff on the website and on Facebook and all of that this year, because we're not sure if we can do information sessions. But we would end up having to do those kinds of things, and we'd have to decide as a board how we were going to handle that and whatnot.
Okay.
We just have, right now, we don't have to. I think it's prudent to go through and listen to each of the department heads so that they can
Yeah.
tell us what they need. And
Agreed.
then within a few weeks, we can sit down and start making those kinds of recommendations.
got
But
it.
at some point, you're going to need, as Ted is pointing out, you're going to need to have an impact statement.
Yep.
You have the choice, town meeting, you have the choice. Your choices will have an impact of this.
Yeah. Does anyone remember the year? Hold on just one second, Darren. Does anyone remember the year that on the floor, due to a change being made on the floor, Margaret gave back part of her salary to make the budget balance? So that's going to be similar things that, we're going to have a lot of different versions playing that day, depending upon what passes.
Okay.
Well, I think if it's a percentage of it's gonna be a percentage of the total budget, like Pete was just talking. We should charge everybody in this book with removing the percentage of that budget, that number out of their budget and across the board. We're not just gonna hit the fire department, police department, we'll hit everybody and see what happens and just go across the board. And whether they like it or don't like it, what do? You gotta have that scenario. Charge Ron was saying, okay, Ron, you guys gotta cut 4% out of everybody's budget. Have a ball. And whatever that number ends up being, it's gonna be the worst case scenario, right? Or they can figure out how they want to do it. Maybe Ron wants to go and say, and Seth, instead of cutting a person, you want to not get a piece of hose. I don't know. Or the cops aren't going to get new guns. They're going to lay somebody off. But that's not, as far as I'm concerned, one of the scenarios should be, it's 4% across the board. If we pass Wachusett's budget, if it gets passed, it's 4% across the board. This is what we need to do. So then we can go to the town and say, we've got these options.
Right.
I think everybody in the book has to, not just the police, fire, and everybody, right through the whole book.
Right. And that's what we did. we go through every department and we tell them what level it is at, but there are certain departments that you can't make cuts to, that we're,
Right.
there are certain departments we cannot say you need to lose 4% because they're required. Veteran services is a required one. You know, there are certain ones that just are required. So we have no
Well,
choice.
I'm sure there's gonna be some that we can't touch, but whatever we can touch, it should be broad-based gain across everybody to
And-
try to get point across to the town.
And that's
No,
what we
but then-
did the last time.
Darren, if you end up doing that, for those that you can't touch, that reduction that you would expect from that group now has to be passed off to everybody else.
Mhm.
And so if that 4%, to gain the 4%, you may have to go to 6, 8, 10% in some of these other places.
Yep.
I understand there's going to be a target, a goal. But once we get to that point and we identify it, we're going to have to make sure that we make sure that the townspeople understand it, for this decision, this is the impact.
100% agree with you, Peter. And what Ron hasn't been privy to, because he's only got a few months, is when we drive up to the town meeting, there's gonna be the drum roll, there's gonna be a conga line that we gotta go around with
Yes.
500 teachers crying.
Right.
And they're gonna win, unless one of the other towns decides to vote this down with us, or a couple of them, and we put them on a 1/12 budget or something like that, they're going to win. We are not gonna do this. They will affect us. And it's the long and the short of it is, unless another one of these towns do it, they will beat us down and we will lose.
Darren, remember the meeting that we had when there was the town meeting that we had when the discussion was around building permits?
Yes,
Had a lot of people there. And if we could get that same number of people to be at that town meeting, even with the school department employees showing up, we would be in a better position to be able to express the difficulties and maybe get a little bit more balanced reaction.
But,
I don't know
Madam-
how- I don't know how we do that. I'm sorry, Ron.
No, that's okay, Madam Chairwoman. I got a variety of comments, and I appreciate the thoughts I just heard, because I've had them myself, right? But I want to kind of make something clear so people understand. If you look at the entire town side of government, right, and you want to cut, as has been mentioned, 4% across the board, you have a couple of problems with that, right? Because there's a lot of fixed expenses that you have no choice of cutting, as was mentioned. Healthcare, as long as you have the same amount of workers, it's a fixed amount, they're going to give it to you. Liability insurance. There's a whole bunch of fixed expenses, unemployment, a whole bunch of fixed expenses that cannot be cut, that are part of and a significant chunk of the town side of government, right? So if you can't make a 4% cut or whatever cut in those, again, you would have to increase the cut to the specific departments by a lot more than 4% to have any significant amount, right? Secondarily, within the department, you have union contracts. Police, fire, DPW, those are all union contracts, and you just can't reduce the salary, for instance, of any of those union contracts. The best you could do is start laying off actual positions, okay? Just to be clear, because they're contractual items. The same is true with a whole bunch of, believe it or not, non-union members. For instance, I have a contract. The police chief has a contract. The fireman has a contract. Fire chief, the DPW director has a contract. The dispatch lead has a contract. You can't cut any of those. You could eliminate the positions if you want to. You can't eliminate a fire chief, police chief. I don't know if you can eliminate the town administrator, but you can't eliminate those positions. They're all contractual. And then a whole bunch of things like police copiers and all that stuff are contractual. So I was thinking about that, and I can go back to the department heads and ask them for recommendations of what they can cut. But to make any real dent, and I still don't think you can come anywhere near 700 or 800 grand. You're literally going to have to eliminate employees. And even the problem with, let's assume, and I know we don't want to, let's assume we're going to lay off a police officer. Starting police officer might make 50 grand, add another $12,000 for benefits, right? So in theory, it's a $62,000 savings to the town. but then you got to pay unemployment for a period of time. So that reduces that unemployment payment, even reduces the salary. So in order to get $100,000 in savings, you might have to eliminate 2 full employees, you know what I mean? So, I'd love to be able to say you can knock it out by hitting the departments by 4%. But I'm going to tell you, we can, and my job truthfully is to look at all the things you guys want me to in terms of finding out what the cost savings are for various options. What are the cost savings for eliminating 1 fireman? What's the cost savings for eliminating 1 policeman, DPW worker, all of those things? What is the cost of eliminating non-union wage increases or?
Ron, hold on 1 second, Ron.
Yep.
We don't tell people how to eliminate. What we do as a finance committee is we would go back to whatever departments and give a certain percentage. It is the
Their job to do it.
department heads that make those choices. We don't make those choices because they're the ones that know what's best for their department.
Right, but we are going to have to figure out, I think you are going to have to figure out what amount of money you want to save in each individual department, right? And the reality is, if you said to the police department, we want to save whatever, 100 grand or whatever it might be, most of the town costs in terms of the general fund budget are labor costs. Across the board, we are a service industry. And that's what we do. We have people and we provide services to citizens. There's not a ton of, buying this or buying that, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, there's going to be real cuts. And this is why I said, at some point, there's going to be a bigger discussion and a political battle at town meeting as to what services do the people want? Do the people want police officers, firemen, DPW workers? Because what the school system is doing is forcing those decisions. It's what services are the good people, if they want the school services, what services and when I say at the school services, at the rate the school committee wants them, the superintendent wants them, what town services you're willing to give up, because there are going to be significant town services being eliminated in this round. It is, because not only are we dealing with the deficit and the money that's for this year, we still deal with the 405,000 from last year. So the cuts are, I think, extreme if we were to just do this on the backs of departments. And then quite frankly, if you do that, all the employees are going to go, wait a minute. You're going to see employees wanting to leave because they're going to say, how come all the teachers got raises? How come all the teachers in the school system got this stuff?
But Ron,
Got killed.
the fact is, we have to put on the floor what the school has asked for.
I know.
So
That's
we have to go through the rigmarole of what we need to do in order to get that number. And then we'll have to do several other iterations for different choices. So we have to do that because we have to put that level. Now, it's not final yet. They're not, the budget meeting is what, next week?
yeah, for the school system.
Yeah. So,
I agree with you, Karen. I just know that what we're going to be proposing to the people at town meeting, if they want to fund the school system at the level they want, it's going to mean a serious reduction in town services. We're going to have to spell it out. They're going to have to see that when they
Yeah.
make the decision. Hell, if they make that decision and they say, hey, we want 4 less police officers, that's their decision. I mean, it's up to them.
but that's what we're going to have to do because we have to put forth the budget that the school committee has given to us. And then we have several other choices that we can do, but that's the thing. We don't, unfortunately, if the town voters decide to vote for the school budget, these are the cuts that are going to be necessary. There's no 2 ways about it.
You're absolutely right, Karen. That's why I was a little puzzled at the comment of putting a finance committee recommended school budget on the table at town meeting. I don't think we can do that. I think you just said we have to present the school meeting. So I'm not sure that is.
No, we can put forth the school budget as is, and we can amend it to an amount that we can afford. There's several different choices that we have that are completely legal to do.
Okay.
But we have to do we have to decide as a board what we think is going to be the best.
So
But right now, we have to start from scratch.
So your answer is you have to show what the school commission asked for, but then you could put, the school asked for a $700,000 increase. The Board of Finance recommends a $300,000 increase. That's what you're saying, right?
Right, exactly.
And that's completely fair. And I think that we're gonna get to that at town meeting the way it looks right now.
So, but that's what we can do.
Yep. No, I agree. That makes sense.
I have a couple questions just on the revenue side. Last year, remember last year, we really didn't know what was coming and going because we had the COVID relief going, we didn't know what towns were getting, and it took forever to get numbers. Is this revenue number from the state and everything, that's solid, that's not changing at all?
So my answer would be this, right? Is everybody's been watching for the last, God knows how many weeks. There's federal legislation that has passed through the Senate that has not gone through the United States House of Representatives yet. About 1.9 million or $1.9 trillion that's being farmed out for a lot of things. One of the things is to give money to the school systems, right? So it could be wonderful that we get a bunch of revenue from the federal government that helps us balance the budget for this year, right? So let's make the assumption we got $500,000 and that helped us reduce the budget by 500 grand and it reduced the deficit by 500 grand. What happens in 2023 when we don't get the 500 and we still have expenses at that level? Now we got even a huge problem in 2023. So I'm not saying we wouldn't accept that money, but the schools would have to knowingly take the 500 grand, use it for their budget this year, and then reduce their budget
Right,
significantly.
flatten themselves out.
But I think-
And what do you think the odds of that are?
Yeah, but I
I know.
think Dave was wondering more about the cherry sheet revenue.
Yeah,
Uh,
more
that
about
could-
cherry sheet.
I think you might see some changes to that. I don't think it's going to be hundreds of $1,000s, but there
And
will
you-
be
you-
some minor changes depending upon what the Ways and Means Committee does. But I think it could go up a little bit. Yeah.
Now, you were saying that the new revenue or whatever it is, the
New
new
revenue.
homes being built, it could go up 100 grand roughly or whatever. Now, when is that just all new? Is that like assessments have gone up, or when did assessments come in?
So the way
When
that
did they
works-
reassess?
So the way it works is the town assessor, in this case, we have a private company that does our assessments. So I've been talking with Harold and assessors all do this. When they first give you the new growth number, it's always conservative. So he gave us
Sure.
the number of 325 that's in the budget that I gave you guys. In talking to Harold, I know it's gonna go up because we've been averaging somewhere around 420 to 450 in new growth. So I expect in an email he sent me, I think it's gonna go up to about 418 grand. So that gives us an additional 80 something $1,000 there that I think we probably will be able to help us in this.
Sure,
Then-
but I guess, Ron, what I was thinking in my head, I'm thinking, there's probably, I don't even know how many houses were built this past year in Rutland. But
That's
there's
all
new
part-
growth, what's that?
That's all part of the new growth number.
Right, but
Anything
but
that
if
wasn't built.
existing homes get reassessed, how often?
Well, they get assessed in a variety of ways. They do what they call a sort of a computer generated appraisal of homes. And then
Right,
they
but is it yearly?
do a physical every, I want to say 10 years or something, they do a physical revaluation. But you remember essentially as the value of homes go up, the mill rate's supposed to drop. Now, if it does or not, depends upon what kind of expenses you build in that year, but you're not going to see any big change in values. It's going to lower the mill rate. That kind of washes itself out. The higher the values of property, the lower your mill rate is,
Okay.
Yep. Now, just so you understand, new growth would be if you add an addition to your house, if you added a deck to your
Sure.
house, right? So if
Yep.
you were to look at the budget presentation I gave you, you'll see that in the kind of the assessment piece of that, there's a slide. You'll see new growth at 325. And you'll see that the impact on the taxpayers after new growth, because that's all new stuff that wasn't in last year's budget, is about 1.9% tax increase. So, and that's sort of an average on the average home, but the tax increase is not huge based upon that assessment rate, but that's with the $900,000 deficit. So, I've already looked, just so you know, I've already looked at, and eventually I'll provide it for you whenever you guys want. I asked the assessor to give me what an override would be based upon the full $1,095,000. And I'll tell you off the top of my head that if you were to do again, it's already been cut from the 1,095, but if you were to do a override, the average taxpayer, now that's not, the high and the low houses and thing, the average taxpayer, in addition to their current taxes, the taxes that would be put into July, would pay $326 and change would be the average house increased tax bill above whatever else we increase them, above the 1.9%. So that's what the average taxpayer would have to pay if you didn't override for the whole debt. Again, the override causes a problem in the future because they can do an override next year too. It's a sort of a never ending problem, you know?
You're never on top of it.
Yep. I hope I answered all your questions in a
Yeah.
reasonable
good.
way.
But Tommy, go ahead. Not me. Sorry, Karen.
Go
We'll
ahead.
have lots more next week.
I'm sure.
I just wanted to comment on a couple of things here. The number one is all these scenarios we just talked about are things we've been over the last, I don't know how many years. Doing all the things you just said, Ron, we've done them before, and even just a few years ago, we put an override on for municipal services and it was passed.
Mhm.
And then the school increase ate it up before we could even use it for municipal services. So we've been through a whole bunch of scenarios to try to get this thing to balance out. The biggest thing that I can see here is somehow the message has got to get to the people that, as the school told us the other day, they're over 100 less students, but yet they want to go up the same percentages. And the numbers come from the state obviously reflect that reduction in students. And it's got to be out there so people understand that. I don't know how else to do it, because if we just put the budget on the way we want it, it's, they're going to load it up so that it gets passed. And nobody seems to want to understand that, because that increase is always so high that we have to cut on the town side. So
And the obvious question to your comment is this: if the state of Massachusetts is going to cut our school district by $1 million, why does the town of Rutland have to increase it? Now we're talking about the whole district. Why do the town of Rutland alone have to pick up $1 million increased cost? The state has to believe that the costs are going to go down because there's less students, right?
correct.
Well, why does the state get to cut the budget by $1 million and then we have to pay $1 million more? That is a pretty obvious question, I think.
Yeah, but
It wasn't all that many years ago that they got one of these grants, like federal grant for a couple $100,000 or $500,000. Tommy will remember when. And all they did is they still zapped the rest of the town, and then they put that towards something else. They're not gonna. Ron, it's almost, I can't say it because there's a lot of people here, but they do whatever they want. And what happens is they get extra money or grants or federal funds, and then they put it to something, and we're stuck anyways. They'll find a way to buy new XYZs, iPads or something, and it'll just be gone, and you won't have a choice.
Hey, let me be clear, because and Karen was involved in this, so I kind of give you what surprised me. And I got to admit, I guess I'm a little naive coming in here because I have big impact on things when I get involved, right? So I was told at the very beginning when I came to town that the school system was going to do this. They're going to come in for a higher number. And silly me thought I could actually impact that, right? So what I did is I talked to all the town manager in Holden and the other town administration of the town, and I worked with them and said, you know what? How are you guys situated? Can you afford a big increase? And every one of them told me they can't, right? So, we were scheduled at a roundtable. All 5 of the towns essentially at the roundtable said, hey, we can't even afford the increases of last year. You have to reduce the increase, right? Then I met specifically with Dan Deedy and talked to Dan Deedy and told him, listen, last year, the increase was 679 grand. We can't afford 679 grand. We still have a $405,000 deficit from last year. Your budget number has to come in less than 679, somewhere underneath the 500 grand is what I told him, right? Had the same conversation with Daryl, the superintendent, said, folks, you just no way we can do that. We go to the round table, everybody says the same thing, all the towns. And then after the round table, we get the budget number. And I'm hoping 400 or 500, something lower. And what do they come out with? 961. I almost fell off my damn chair. They could care less. I hate to say it, and I said it to them. It seems like they could care less what we said at the round table. Karen was there. Mitch fought the fight. Other towns fought the fight. It was
Welcome to the Rutland the school
Yeah.
district.
You're the only
doing this for
one that
years.
was surprised.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought if they wanted to
Exactly.
be last year's, right? I mean, I never thought they would go to that number. I mean, it blew me away that they would ask for that kind of number.
You'd probably be better off, well-served to get Sterling. Princeton's not gonna do anything because it's cheap money for them, right? If we
Yeah.
could get Sterling on our side, the town administrator, to write a letter, to fight the fight.
I don't think you're gonna get Sterling either, though. Who you're gonna
Why?
get this year is you're gonna get Holden.
No, but you,
I'll tell you why. Holden, the town manager and the board of selectmen basically told them the increase can't be more than $1 million. We can't afford it. They came back with a number of $2.3 million increase for Holden. They were furious with that. Even with
what's
the
up with Sterling? Why won't they join us?
dollars aren't big enough, and I guess they have the money to pay for it because it's not huge dollars. It's a smaller town. But Holden, even after the cut they just did, it's still at $1.9 million. So Holden is, for the first time, I'm told, really upset. And so I got the town manager, the town manager of Holden, and the town administrator of Paxton all wrote letters telling them that the increase was too high and they had to cut it. So I got all of those 3 towns. I think if we have any chance at town meeting, in the other 2, both Sterling and Princeton, they have new town administrators that are still somewhat weaker. They just don't have the experience. Unlike me, who just gets obnoxious and starts fighting out of the box. They're newer. They're not experienced managers. So they're not all that willing to take on this kind of a challenge and fight the school district, right? So if
Well,
there's any chance, it's going to be Holden, Paxton, and Rutland, because you need 3 towns to vote down this budget at town meeting. And that's no easy feat with the hundreds of people
2 towns.
work in the school system that live there. Or
Right.
2 towns that have to, is it 2 or, yeah, 2 towns that have to shoot.
You,
So maybe the 2 of them can do it. We'll see,
That's,
Ron, you better rest up.
that's assuming that we get enough people to show up at the meeting to
Get
not
it
vote it in either.
to go down.
We got,
Right.
we have a hard time getting that done.
that's right.
Well,
So
that's,
I think we
that's the
should have a
reason,
barbecue.
that's the reason why this year we've got to make sure that when we put together everything, we need to put specifics as to what those cuts will be to town services. If you vote for the school budget, we need to hit it hard.
And,
Right.
and Karen, I really believe if it ends up going through whatever, we have to make the cuts, then the people are gonna have to feel it.
Yep.
They won't have a pool, they won't have extra police. They're gonna have to feel it, because until they, hey, whatever, people have opened the pool before. And the people say, well, see, someone always comes through. Well, I know it's that person that opened it last time, ain't opened it this time. I know for a fact that's not happening.
Yeah.
One thing to come through for 20 grand or 10 grand or 5 grand. It's another thing to come through for 700,000. It's
I
not.
understand that, but the people are still gonna have to feel it if they're gonna put it through. They're gonna feel something.
Karen, can I get, Karen?
Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
Did you just see the comment that came from Mitch on the screen there about
Yes.
Just-
what
yeah.
was that? What were those opinions that they published?
Sorry.
I didn't read them, but I know Holden and Paxton have published opinions in Landmark, and they've put that it's going to hurt town services.
Can I can jump in if you don't mind the children's music playing in the background, if that's okay through the chair.
Go ahead.
I just know that Holden and I know Peter and Ron have been very vocal, and they have been inviting to the Landmark to their meetings. Holden has been very vocal to the Landmark about their inability to deal with the increase. And then there was an article published this week by Paxton. They took the same track that Holden did. So this is a little bit different, I think, than prior years in the sense where there is a collective, as of right now, understanding from all the towns that this could be tough, and you are facing cuts in services and layoffs if the school budget goes through as proposed. So,
But we can all be in agreement in this meeting. We can be all in agreement at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We can all be on the same page. When it comes right down to it, it's the taxpayers that make the decision. And that's the reason why we've got to make sure we get the word out, because it's the taxpayers that make that decision.
Hey, Mitch, can you forward those articles to me? Because I'd like to join that chorus. As long as the Board of Selectmen has no objection, I'd like to also pen a letter setting the tone that it's going to be very damaging to town service as well. I'd be happy to have that and put that in the Landmark as well. But I'd like to see what they said so I can base my letter around that.
yep, I can forward that to everybody.
You have no objection as chair of the Board of Selectmen in me doing that, correct?
I can't make that decision. I can't speak on behalf of the board, and we can't really make that decision tonight, even though there's.
2 weeks. Yeah, no, that's right. I'll take my chance. I think I'm comfortable that the board would agree generally with the kind of topic I'll write about, but I'm willing to take that chance. I'm pretty comfortable. I understand the general attitude of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so I did reach out to Ron to reach out to the Board of Health, and we have gotten approval. Nancy Nichols said that we could use the Council on Aging for our meetings, and the Board of Health has approved it. So I was looking tonight to see if anyone was going to be interested in attending meetings, socially distanced with masks, everything like that, at the Council on Aging. We would still have Zoom meetings for those that couldn't make it, but I'd like to know, raise of hands of those that would go to the Council on Aging for an in-person meeting, socially distanced with masks, all of that kind of stuff.
Karen, can I ask you a question before you ask the members? Because I was just thinking of something.
Sure.
So if you're going to run a Zoom meeting, and let's assume you had 3 other finance board members in the room, the public who would be watching it, unless everybody brings a laptop and is on Zoom as well, how would the public see those other members? Like in the Board of Selectmen, we do that because we have public access taping it. But in a finance meeting, let's assume Tom came and was just using paper. How would people on Zoom be able to see Tom and maybe even hear Tom in that meeting?
Hearing Tom would be something that we'd have to manage to work it out when I have some ideas on how that works, but seeing is not a requirement.
You at least have to hear what people had said, right?
Exactly. And that's,
We gotta think about that. Yeah, how we do that.
I've already got some ideas and stuff like that. So that's not a huge issue, I don't think, because we can manage with different, I have a laptop and whatnot to manage. We can pass it around.
Does
I
that
never
facility
remember-
have Wi-Fi?
Huh?
Does that facility have Wi-Fi?
It does?
Good question.
So we have these Chromebooks, right? We can bring
Right.
those.
Yes.
But I never remember anybody knocking down the doors or a line outside a finance committee meeting. So
No.
Yeah, but
unless it's gonna be something new.
it's not that they show up, that under open meeting law, it has to be available to them. You know, they
Nope.
have to be able to hear the meeting and stuff.
And that's not going to be an issue. We will make sure that that occurs.
And excuse me, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. This is also going to play, we'll have to do it with the recording from Zoom. So to Ron's point, all the points have to be heard by anybody discussing. Otherwise, we have huge problems, not legal and technical.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I
So,
bring my couch?
no.
Good idea.
It's not as comfortable, I'm gonna be honest.
It is a nice couch, though.
Hey, I found it on the side of the road.
So could I see a show of hands of those that would be interested in going to the Council on Aging?
I'll go, I don't care.
Okay, because I know I'm,
I'll go.
okay. So I would say let's try for Thursday, going to the Council on Aging. If everyone was to bring their Chromebooks, and if need be, we'll pass around my laptop. One way or the other, we'll get it all so that everyone can speak. I'm not worried about that. We'll figure that out. Because being on camera isn't as important as being heard.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
okay, I'll make sure that that gets all squared away. Any other discussion points for this evening?
Well, so just a question for Peter Crane. Peter, at one point in time, were we not broadcasting the FinCom meetings live?
Yes, we were. We were doing it from the library.
Mhm.
And
Is
right now, library meetings are forbidden because of the vaccination clinics.
Okay,
So when those move out of the library, scheduled for April, the meetings could move back into the library and we can do it all from here.
okay. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just thinking that right now, it might be somewhat nice that might be nice to all get together in a room and have conversations instead of having to figure out who's muted and who's not.
Now, based upon conversations I had with Karen, you're gonna find that tonight was pretty light meeting and Thursday's pretty light, but after that, I think you're gonna see a longer agenda and a longer meetings so that we can actually get through this stuff as quickly as possible. Is that correct, Karen?
Yes,
And Karen, we're gonna be doing Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, because we've got to get through a lot of materials and then we're gonna have to go through all the iterations of the budget.
And it'll be at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Does that work
Okay.
for everybody?
I'm good.
Okay,
Does
so,
everyone see Mitch's note?
yes,
Okay.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
going to be working on a rough schedule tonight, getting it approved by Ian, and then we'll send it off to Mika, and then she'll get that all squared away. So,
Get it approved by who?
Ian,
Ian who?
The chair. You know?
He's burning the midnight oil.
yeah,
I'm
he's
sure
got to
he is.
work tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Always a wise guy in the room, you
Yeah,
know?
I know. Hey, I'm old. I can get away with that stuff.
There you go.
So, I guess if no one else has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Okay, Ted,
Purcell, I.
Dave,
Lucy or I.
Darren,
Ross, aye.
Tommy,
Rushala, aye.
Pete,
O'Malley, aye.
and Narwhal die. Okay, it's unanimous. All right, guys, we'll see you guys at the Council on Aging at 6 o'clock on Thursday.